morning. Imagine a global chessboard where the pieces are, well, entirely invisible.
Right.
The players are supercomputers, and a single wrong move could potentially trigger a global financial crisis. Today, it is our mission to deliver a clear-eyed, objective assessment of this new front line of digital warfare.
Indeed, it is a highly complex and rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape.
Precisely. We are providing a factual look into this domain. This program is brought to you by ProWave AI, and this deep dive is generated by Stylo News, the AI-powered news application.
And for the official record, let us state the specifics of today's briefing.
Yes, the title is Cyber Frontlines, Global Hacks, AI Threats, and Digital Warfare. The region of focus is the cyber domain, and today's date is the 26th of May, 2026.
It is a privilege to be here. The landscape we are examining today requires careful, measured review. Our focus will remain strictly on the facts, free from speculation or, sensationalism.
Before we proceed, we must quickly establish the context of the intelligence we are reviewing today.
A vital step.
The Stylo News application you are using is the consumer version of the Stylo Intel Ops software. Now, that platform is traditionally designed for enterprise operations across government, military, and corporate sectors.
Which means you, the listener, have unique access to the exact same analytical power designed to support global decision-makers in their daily operational planning.
Exactly. It's a vital tool, considering the sheer volume of information out there today. Now, our mission overview for this briefing is straightforward. We will examine the primary patterns of cyber events over the last 2 weeks, specifically looking at state actors and the introduction of artificial intelligence.
We will also trace the tangible impact scaling from local disruptions up to international markets.
Right. Following that, we will review the proposed courses of action from key global decision makers, alongside an analysis of social media sentiment. This helps gauge the public consensus.
And finally, we will look at the horizon to identify the most likely upcoming events you should monitor.
To truly understand how this impacts daily life and the broader economy, we must first establish a factual baseline. Who is operating in this domain, and exactly how are they operating?
Based on the Stylo Intel Ops estimate spanning the last 2 weeks, we have identified 4 principal nation-state actors.
The first is China. Their operations are characterized by highly capable, stealthy espionage. Recent reporting highlights 2 major operations: the Twill Typhoon campaign and Volt Typhoon.
Yes. Now, the reports note, Twill Typhoon utilizes a covert FDMTP backdoor embedded in legitimate Windows and .NET tools.
For those outside the cybersecurity sector, how should we visualize a covert backdoor using legitimate tools?
Well, think of it like a saboteur gaining access to a highly secure building, not by breaking a window,
Right.
but by quietly rewriting the building's architectural blueprints to include a hidden service elevator.
I see.
Because they're using legitimate, trusted Microsoft frameworks to build this elevator, the building security guards, in this case the antivirus software, they do not perceive it as a threat.
That explains the stealth. And Volt Typhoon operates similarly, pre-positioning within critical infrastructure.
Correct. The established objective is strategic latent access.
Essentially planting a sleeper cell within a city's power or water grid, quietly waiting for future contingencies.
Exactly. Now, moving to the second actor, Russia's operations maintain a distinct focus on hybrid warfare and disruptive pressure, particularly across Europe.
Yes, our intelligence highlights a development that speaks to, well, long-term strategic planning. The GRU military intelligence apparatus is running a covert cyber training program at Moscow's Bauman University.
And this curriculum actively instructs students in election interference and practical hacking.
I suppose that is a slightly different elective than an introductory psychology course.
Very much so. They're institutionalizing the training. Concurrently, we are tracking their immediate disruptive activities, such as the no-name 057 attacks targeting French railway and payment systems.
Those were distributed denial of service or DDoS attacks, correct?
They were.
Just to clarify the mechanics for everyone, a DDoS attack isn't necessarily breaking into a system to steal data, is it?
No, it is not an infiltration.
It's more akin to sending a million fake commuters to a train station all at once, so the real passengers physically cannot get through the doors.
That is a precise analogy. The system is simply overwhelmed by artificial traffic. Now, the third principal actor is Iran.
Right. Their methodology largely relies on operating through proxies, with a pronounced focus on targeting critical infrastructure.
Recent assessments point to Iranian involvement in the muddy water ransomware campaigns. Furthermore, they are strongly suspected in recent cyber attacks targeting United States fuel tank monitoring systems.
As well as an infiltration of a Uruguayan digital identity platform.
Exactly. Which brings us to North Korea. Their cyber operations remain predominantly driven by financial motivations.
Yes, the U.S. State Department has publicly reported that North Korea utilized cryptocurrency theft to fund weapons of mass destruction programs. The estimated total is roughly $20 billion over the past year alone.
It is a staggering figure.
Wait, $20 billion in a single year. That is not just a digital side hustle. That is functionally funding an entire nation's defense and weapons budget through cryptocurrency theft.
It is.
How are they executing this, and how are they moving that volume of capital without tripping international alarms?
Well, they utilize highly sophisticated tumbling and mixing services to obfuscate the origin of the stolen cryptocurrency. But the initial access often comes through specialized units like the APT-37 group.
And what is their specific target?
We are currently tracking them, conducting highly targeted spear phishing campaigns against South Korean security and policy officials.
And spear phishing is distinct from your average generic spam email asking for a wire transfer. This is, well, it's a sniper shot.
Precisely. They're using highly specific personal or professional details to trick a specific official into opening a compromised file.
Right. They map the target's network, understand their daily workflow, and send a payload that looks indistinguishable from a legitimate internal memo.
Exactly. So we have a clear picture of these four state actors. But the variable fundamentally altering this landscape is artificial intelligence.
Yes, we are seeing constant references to advanced AI models like Anthropic's Mythos. You mentioned earlier that AI causes a dramatic compression of the timeline of a cyber attack.
Yes, it is a paradigm shift.
Walk us through the actual mechanics of that. How does AI change the timeline?
Historically, when a vulnerability in a piece of software was discovered by the public, there was a window of time, often weeks or months, before malicious actors could develop a reliable exploit.
Because a human hacker essentially had to study the lock, design a specific key by hand, and then test it.
Precisely. AI fundamentally shifts this. AI models act like an automated lockpicker.
Interesting.
The moment a vulnerability is disclosed, the AI can theoretically test millions of combinations a second. It is like hiring a million microscopic interns to comb through every line of code overnight.
So it automates the discovery and the weaponization.
Correct. This shifts the advantage heavily to the attacker because human defenders simply cannot patch systems fast enough manually.
Which dictates that an equally automated AI-driven defensive response is now required just to maintain parity.
Exactly.
So if we trace the blast radius of these operations, we begin to see how this theoretical timeline compression causes tangible damage.
Yes, let us examine the cascading impacts, starting at the local level.
Recently, we observed a massive breach of the Canvas learning management system by the Shiny Hunters group. This incident compromised the data of 275 million users.
And it wasn't just a quiet data theft. It directly disrupted final exams at universities across several U.S. states, including Georgia and California.
At the most localized individual level, there has also been a documented surge in sophisticated phone hacking scams in Mumbai, specifically utilizing AI to target the elderly population for financial fraud.
In the corporate sector, the damage is equally tangible. We saw the Foxconn ransomware attack executed by the Nitrogen Group.
Right. They extracted 11 million files, explicitly threatening to disrupt North American technology supply chains if demands were not met.
When we look at the national impacts, the regulatory and legal fallout is becoming quite clear.
Yes. In the United States, a former L3 Harris defense contractor was recently ordered by a court to pay $10 million in restitution for stealing and selling advanced hacking tools to a Russian broker.
We're also seeing a paradox in governance. Regulatory bodies in both the U.S. and the U.K. are actively imposing stricter operational resilience requirements on critical businesses.
While simultaneously, we are seeing reported budget cuts and leadership turnover at the very defense agencies like the NSA and CISA tasked with supporting them.
However, the international impacts present perhaps the most severe long-term concerns.
Yes, the International Monetary Fund has issued a stark public warning. They assess that AI-powered cyber attacks have reached a level of sophistication where they could now trigger global macroeconomic shocks.
The IMF specifically warns of scenarios causing severe liquidity shortages and the potential failure of payment systems on a global scale.
Help me draw a direct line here because the disparity in scale is vast. How does a disrupted biology final on a college platform in Georgia escalate to the point where the IMF is warning about a global macroeconomic crisis?
The connection lies in the concept of systemic risk and shared digital plumbing.
Elaborate on that.
Well, the architecture underlying a major educational cloud platform or a technology manufacturing giant like Foxconn relies on the exact same fundamental software supply chains, APIs, and network protocols as international finance.
So the Canvas hack was essentially a proof of concept.
Exactly. If an AI-driven attack successfully compromises a platform managing 275 million users, it proves that the automated lockpicking methodologies we discussed are sound. The IMS concern is that these exact same AI-accelerated methods can simply be redirected. If they point that automated lockpicker at the foundational payment clearing systems or the SWIFT network that holds global markets together, a technical failure rapidly becomes a liquidity crisis.
To put it in perspective for the listener, it is the difference between a student not being able to take a test and you not being able to buy groceries tomorrow because your banking application is frozen globally.
Precisely. Faced with these systemic risks, we must examine how global decision-makers are reacting, and importantly, how the public is responding.
In the United States, General Joshua Rudd is currently leading a newly formed AI task force bridging the NSA and Cyber Command. Their mandate is to safely integrate AI into military and defensive operations.
Concurrently, former White House Cyber Director Jake Braun is publicly advocating for massively expanded law enforcement resources to specifically counter the ransomware threat.
We see equally decisive movement internationally. Poland is aggressively increasing federal funding to physically and digitally protect its water and energy sectors following a series of Russian-linked cyber attacks.
In South Korea, the National Security Office is convening high-level interagency meetings, specifically focused on coordinating an AI-driven national defense strategy.
And within the private sector, Japan's 3 major banks aren't waiting for government mandates. They are proactively partnering to utilize Anthropic's Claude Mythos AI model to bolster their internal cybersecurity defenses.
Fighting AI with AI.
Indeed. Now, to understand the broader consensus, we have analyzed social media sentiment, specifically tracking discourse on X. The public tone is surprisingly vigilant and constructive, rather than fearful.
Yes. Users are actively sharing educational tips on identifying deepfakes and maintaining AI safety. They frequently reference educational accounts like @cyber_info_booby.
There is also broad public praise for defensive successes, such as Google thwarting a recent mass AI exploitation attempt. The community is effectively advocating for a neighborhood watch style of digital awareness.
It is worth noting, however, there is a shared vocal frustration regarding corporate supply chain vulnerabilities.
Right. This was highly visible in the reactions to the Foxconn hack, where users expressed deep concern over the fragility of global tech manufacturing.
The public sentiment appears to be acting much like a civilian immune system, focusing on prevention, education, and digital hygiene rather than succumbing to panic.
But does this measured public resilience give decision-makers a blank check? Does it provide the mandate they need to implement stricter and perhaps more intrusive defensive courses of action?
The analysis suggests it provides a mandate for regulation, though not necessarily intrusion.
How so?
While the broad public support we see for initiatives like the U.S. Cyber Games and the communal demand for rapid software patching demonstrates a clear consensus. The public recognizes the threat. Therefore, the most viable course of action for decision-makers is to leverage this public willingness by increasing corporate transparency requirements, establishing clear international regulatory frameworks, and moving aggressively to deploy AI defensively.
The public is not asking for retreat. They are asking for competent defense.
Well said. With a clear understanding of the current responses and the public consensus, it is vital to know exactly what events to monitor in the coming weeks.
Here is the horizon. In the realm of policy and military, watch for the continued rollout of the U.S. military's AI task force throughout the remainder of 2026 and into 2027.
Furthermore, closely monitor the International Monetary Fund as they draft new global AI cybersecurity guidelines designed specifically to protect financial markets.
In terms of diplomacy, 2 major developments require attention. The first is the implementation phase of the UN Hanoi Convention Against Cybercrime,
which represents the first global treaty focused specifically on cross-border evidence sharing.
The second is the ongoing development of the ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement, which aims to secure digital trade across Southeast Asia.
Regarding these diplomatic efforts, one must ask, are treaties like the UN Hanoi Convention essentially just paper shields?
Right. When they are deployed against autonomous AI-driven malware that does not respect physical borders or jurisdictions? Do they hold any practical weight?
It is a vital question. An objective analysis reveals their utility lies in the physical realm. A treaty, of course, cannot physically block malicious code.
Of course not.
However, hackers still rely on physical infrastructure. They need massive server farms, cooling systems, payment gateways, and financial networks distributed across multiple countries.
Ah, I see.
The Hanoi Convention provides the legal mechanism for allied nations to coordinate investigations and physically raid those spaces. It is not a shield against the code itself, but rather the crucial legal foundation for a coordinated global counteroffensive to dismantle the infrastructure the code runs on.
Finally, regarding geopolitics, there will be heightened vigilance surrounding the upcoming U.S. elections. This event must be viewed directly in the context of the long-term strategic investments in election interference training that we noted earlier at institutions like Russia's Bauman University.
That concludes the intelligence portion of today's briefing.
In summary, the cyber domain remains highly active with distinct operations from China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. However, global decision makers and the public at large are shifting away from a reactive posture toward a proactive, AI-assisted defensive strategy.
Yes.
To understand how we process this vast volume of geopolitical data, allow me to explain the technology powering today's insights. Stylo News is a mobile and computer application that allows individuals to download and customize personal intelligence-style briefs just like this one.
It utilizes a proprietary vector engine to instantly pull, translate, and analyze data from over 250 traditional news sources worldwide, as well as real-time sentiment from X.
It synthesizes this massive data set and delivers comprehensive, highly accurate reports in under 60 seconds. We encourage you to take advantage of this capability.
You can subscribe to Stylo News to get AI-powered news on demand, customized to your specific operational or personal interests by visiting www.stylonews.com.
And dropping the 1960s broadcaster voices for just a moment, thank you guys so much for taking the time to hang out and listen to this deep dive with us today.
Yeah, seriously, thank you. It's a super heavy, incredibly complex topic, but we really appreciate you letting us unpack the mechanisms behind the headlines for you.
It truly is a fascinating landscape. You know, it's like shifting almost daily right now.
Oh, absolutely. Like you wake up and the entire paradigm has moved. So thanks for joining us and exploring the how and the why behind the news.
Yeah, and we would love to hear what you want us to look into next. Please feel free to request topics for future deep dives, and be sure to follow Stylo News on your favorite social media platforms to stay in the loop.
Yeah, definitely hit us up. But before we sign off, I actually wanted to leave you with one final objective thought to ponder as you look at the news this week.
Oh, lay it on us.
Well, if advanced AI models like Mythos are simultaneously becoming like the ultimate automated weapon for state-sponsored hackers and the ultimate defensive shield for global banks and militaries,
right?
Does the future of international security rely more on the human beings writing the diplomatic laws or the machines quietly analyzing the code?